Hey guys, I'm Azra, and in this Lord of the Rings Rise to War video, I'm going to show you a guide about the King of the Dead. Is this guy worth mentioning? Like, is he among the top 5 best T3 commanders on good side? In my opinion, he isn't. He is maybe among the top 8 commanders, but not 5. And there is a reason why. If you're fighting against good side, he might be viable. But if you are fighting against evil side, I wouldn't pick the King of the Dead, and in this video I'm going to show you why. Let's get going. Just as always, let's start with the general overview. So the King of the Dead is considered a leader. He has a bigger army than compared to non-leader commanders. His stats wise, his speed stat is the best one, but that's it. Like, he doesn't have any abilities that scale with his speed, so what good is there for having high speed if we don't scale with our abilities? Then lots of might, and then his focus stat. So in my opinion, you should aim to push his might stat as high as possible, just to get more damage out of your oath breakers. And that would be another point. This guy was designed to be played with oath breakers only. Don't use anything else. I have tried it out for 4 seasons right now. He doesn't make sense with anything but oath breakers. This is the gear I'm running right now. Some focus protection, some hysteria, why not? And drums of Moria. And guys, this purple accessory is among the few accessories he can equip. I think that's even the only one he can equip that makes sense with him. So whenever you get a drums of Moria and you want to push your King of the Dead, keep the drums of Moria, since there isn't anything else that makes sense with the King of the Dead. Alright, cool. Now let's jump over to his skills. I'm going to quickly go over all the skills he has and just describe to you what this does. So, Betrayer. All of your oath breakers will deal additional damage, like in general your army, but you will only be equipping oath breakers anyway. Once you have maxed out the Betrayer, the enemy cannot be healed anymore. Like, your army can be healed since you have your Respect 5 ability, and this is also why you should be playing the King of the Dead only in Respect 5 build, since anything less doesn't make sense with this guy. And once you have it, you will also get healing for your oath breakers while denying healing against the enemy army. Then we have Confusion. This is strong CC. When you have maxed this out, I think it will be 30% chance to silence the enemy commander on each round, as well as you reduce the focus on each round. On each round you reduce focus. What does silence mean? Silence means that the enemy can't activate his skills. What is a skill? All of these blue things you see, like this ability, this, these are considered skills, just as it states here. So you have a 30% chance of shutting that down on every round. That is amazing. CC. Intimidation, another version of CC, and this time it is stun. So on each round you reduce might, as well as you have a chance to stun the enemy commander. And this is amazingly strong, because whenever someone is stunned, he can't attack and he can't activate skills. So this is even further denying damage. And once this is maxed out, it has a, I think, 15% chance of stunning the enemy. Keep that in mind. Maybe it's even more worth to first stack Confusion, like max out this, since it has 30% and is more likely to activate multiple times in a battle. But whenever Intimidation activates with the stun, this might be greater. But 15% compared to 30%? I don't know, like, pick what you think is better. I kinda tend to go more with Confusion. Alright, Incorporeal. This just means that whenever you put a point, your normal attacks start to deal focus damage, like they completely become focus damage, and that means you are cutting through the defensive stat. But you can, of course, be countered by High Alert or Focus Protection with the Quilted Armor. Once you have maxed it out, it gives you plus focus. Then we have Boggle. Boggle is dealing a chunk of focus damage against 2 enemy targets every 3 rounds, and this is also scaling with your focus stat. And whenever you hit a target with this, the next damage they receive get increased by a certain percentage, and that certain percentage scales with focus too. So this is kind of a heavy elemental damage build. If you want your King of the Dead to do the work, like instead of his army, he is going to deal the damage. But I wouldn't recommend playing in that build. Then we have Dreadful Presence. This 2 activates every 3 rounds. This will be activated against 3 enemy targets, dealing focus damage, which scales with focus. And whenever you hit a target with this, they can only deal minimum damage for 1 round. I mean, yeah, if you don't have anything, you could go with that. But guys, remember, don't play the King of the Dead if you don't have a Respect 5. That's the only build that makes sense with him. I wouldn't experiment around with these skills here. That's just not worth it. And then at Respect 3, we have the title Man of the Mountains, and this is great. This is mandatory in your Respect 5 build later. As soon as you put 1 point into this, allied and enemy units start to deal minimum damage. Having Oathbreakers in your team comp will be great for this, since their minimum and maximum damage scale is like very close to each other. Focus Breath is a skill in his Respect 3 title. It is activated every 3 rounds and it deals focus damage, which scales with focus, but that's not what we are aiming for. We would like to have at least 1 point into Focus Breath just to get the Inflict Madness for 1 round. So this alone is worth to spend 1 point into this, which we will be doing later. Then we have Chaotic Retreat. Why would I, as a King of the Dead player with Oathbreakers, put any points into this, since reducing the enemy's defense increases the physical damage they take, but Oathbreakers and the King of the Dead are going to deal focus damage, so we benefit 0 by spending any points into this. Then we are coming to his greater skills, his Respect 5 skill, where he really starts to shine. Army of the Dead. Allied Undead, like 1 undead unit. On every round recovers a certain percentage HP twice. This stacks with focus, like it scales with focus. The more focus you have, the more healing you are going to put out. And you can't get this effect cancelled out by, let's say, healing nullification of Gimli or Dine. That's not working against this, since it says unaffected by HP recovery debuff. And once you have maxed this title out, you also get a bonus effect, which is all allied undead units gain stun immunity. And this is amazing, because you are going to play with a single stack of Oathbreakers. You want to have them stun immune, or else your damage gets shut down. Frightened, also very strong CC. Like the King of the Dead, we don't call him for nothing King of CC. This is among the reasons why. He has, in the first 4 rounds, a high chance, like I think it will be 50% once you max it out, to stun 2 units on every round for the first 4 rounds. This is extremely strong. And then Deadman of Dunhorrow, allied undead, damage received minus 7% when you max it out, since you're going to have Oathbreakers anyway. This is nice damage mitigation for them. If we now were to build our King of the Dead, how would it look like? It would look something like this. So first we want self-healing for our Oathbreakers going on, since they are expansive and we want them to stay alive as long as possible. So we max out Army of the Dead. Then we want to have strong CC. We are going to max out our stun, Frightened. And since we are here, let's also ensure that our Oathbreakers get a bit more chunky. Let them eat less damage by putting some points into Deadman of Dunhorrow. Alright, 7% damage mitigation. And now let's put 2 points into Man of the Mountains, just to have that minimum damage going on here. Our Oathbreakers won't suffer from this really. The enemy army will suffer from this even more. And then we put 1 point into Focus Breath to have the Madness proc every 3 rounds. And then 1 point into Corporeal just to have our focus damage. Every normal attack becomes now focus damage. And then we go over to Betrayer and start spending our points like this. 2 points into Betrayer. Then either you put 1 point into Intimidation or 1 point into Confusion. So do you want to have a chance of, let's say, 15% of stunning the enemy or 30% of silencing the enemy? I think generally I would be going to the silencing effect, and I would go into this, but since Intimidation has also a might reducing feature built into it, I think I'm going to go with a might reduction. This will be good against high commander damage commanders such as Dain, Dwalin, Gimli, and so on. And then I would do something like this: 1 point into Intimidation, 2 points into Betrayer. And then I would be going back and forth until I've maxed everything out. And from here on, whatever points I have left, I would be putting into Confusion. But as you see, we don't have enough points left to max out Confusion, which is a pity. Right now, my King of the Dead is level 47, which means I still have 3 more points left, which I could potentially spend into Confusion. Which means we will still need 2 more points to have maximum value out of our King of the Dead. So, and this is why you shouldn't push your King of the Dead further than Respect 8. If you have Respect 8 and he's level 50, you will have enough points to max out Confusion. And that's where I would stop spending into my King of the Dead. Anything more won't really make him stronger, like you won't feel his strength increasing anymore. And now it is time to talk about the strength and weaknesses of the King of the Dead. Let's start with his strength. Looking at his Respect 5 title, we can immediately establish that the stun immunity is his first strength. His second strength would be that the King of the Dead is running Oathbreakers and they have 90% physical damage mitigation. This is giving the King of the Dead enough time to self-sustain his Oathbreakers with his R5 title. So physical damage resistance is his number 2. His third strength would be, since he's running a solo stack of Oathbreakers, he is kinda immune to madness. If you have only 1 unit in your army, you can't hit the neighboring army since you consist of only 1 army anyway. So that is also a big strength of his. His next strength would be, well, it is kinda obvious. We have Oathbreakers in our team composition, as well as we have spent 1 point into Corporeal. That means we are dealing nothing but focus damage. So that means the King of the Dead is ignoring the defensive stat of the enemy army, but that can also be played against him in his weaknesses part. Well, we will come back to that later. Last but not least, the King of the Dead isn't called the King of CC for nothing. He has very strong CC. Let's look at the strongest CCs he have, like Frighten in the first rounds, 50% chance of stunning the enemy units, like 2 units. That is a reliable stun against the enemy army. Then we also have Focus Rev with the reliable Madness proc. Like, you get this 100% every 3 rounds. Madness against the enemy army. Then you also have a chance, like, stunning the enemy commander. So you aren't just bringing army stun and armies madness to the table, but also commander stun, as well as commander silence. Oh boy. And by the way, you also deny healing for the enemy army with this title maxed out. So these are the strengths of the King of the Dead. Now let's have a look at his weaknesses, starting with his focus damage. Just as I mentioned before, by spending 1 point at the Corporeal, we start to be heavy on the elemental damage, and this is unfortunately counterable by the Quilted Armor with the effect Focus Protection. Not just only this ability, but also the damage of his Oathbreakers. They are dealing nothing but focus damage. And when somebody has equipped, let me show you. As soon as somebody has equipped this item with this special effect, your damage of your Oathbreakers, of your King of the Dead, gets shut down. And you get almost no value out of your King of the Dead with Oathbreakers. Like, this item alone is enough to shut down your King of the Dead. That's it. This is his number 1 weakness. Of course, there is also High Alert that can counter your King of the Dead. It won't be 60%, but it will be 50%, and 50% is still solid enough to counter the King of the Dead. Gandalf the Grey, for example, has High Alert. There it is. Maxed out, it will be 50% damage reduction. The second weakness of the King of the Dead is for sure his elemental damage vulnerability. When you're fighting against good side, make sure to equip the Quilted Armor with Focus Protection, since you're going to need it against, let's say, Galadriels or other King of the Dead with Oathbreaker players. Or let's say Gil-galads who have keepers in their army comp. But when you are fighting evil side, make sure to equip the superior hauberk with fire protection. Anything less isn't worth playing with the King of the Dead. Whenever you start losing Oathbreakers, that's going to hit your economy a lot in regards to your gold. If you don't really have enough gold, it will hurt your economy. It has come to my attention that it's just not worth it. I am having more troop losses than wins. The third weakness would be debuffing mechanics, such as Khaldun's Respect 0 title. I'm talking about the bottom title. Whenever he auto-attacks you, your stats are getting cut by 20%. And your Oathbreakers dealing 20% less damage, that's something you're going to feel. Or let's say debuff of the Undying, which also reduces your damage by 20%. That's something you're going to feel as well. But I think the biggest debuff mechanic that is strongest against the Oathbreakers is the special effect of the T4 Variax unit, which is reducing your damage by 50% when the T4 unit has been maxed out. And that is hurting the King of the Dead a lot. His last weakness would be normal attacks. One would wonder, like, wow, normal attacks, how comes? Isn't that like mitigated by his Oathbreakers being 90% resistant to physical damage? No. You should know that normal attacks aren't considered physical damage. Normal attacks are normal attacks, which is why they are called normal attacks and not physical damaging attacks. Who is dealing a lot of normal damage? For example, Gimli, Dwalin, or let's say the Shadow. The Shadow is dealing a ton of normal damage, and of course Legolas. Alright, it's time to have a look at his purple gear and see why this is what I consider his best in slot gear. So as his weapon, I don't think that we have to talk about this, like the Cutlass in many cases is the best weapon for so many commanders. The King of the Dead isn't an exception. Cutlass, overall, all good stats, but it has also plus attack for your melee army, and Oathbreakers are considered infantry. Infantry benefit a lot by plus attack, and this is giving you +3. Melee might is always nice to have. The superior hauberk is a armor which we would like to use against evil side. As you see, once you have maxed this out, it will give you -60% fire damage mitigation, which you're going to need if you intend to play your King of the Dead against evil side. The same logic applies for the good side, but in that case you would be equipping the quilted armor with focus protection. Then, as his helmet option, I have just listed the Bone Mask, since this is in my opinion his best option he has. Overall, good stats, and then you get to choose between Hysteria or Manipulate. Do you want to be more aggressive? Then go with Hysteria, but that's kinda risky, because whenever Hysteria procs, it also needs to kick in. I don't like to rely on luck alone, which is why I like to run with Manipulate, but every now and then I'm trying out Hysteria as well. As our accessory, we have to go with Drums of Moria, since there isn't anything else that makes more sense than this. And then you get to choose between Bane of Dwarfs as a special effect or Haste of Soldiers. If you're fighting good side, stick to Bane of Dwarf. If you're fighting evil side, go with Haste of Soldiers. Having a look at his golden gear, I have decided to go with these items, and let me explain why. So the Obsidian Dagger is, in my opinion, a weapon that has been designed for the King of the Dead with Oathbreakers. And the very reason why is not just because of the stats are overall perfect for him, but because of the special effect Resurrection. One allied target each round recovers a certain percentage HP once when your army is comprised of only undead units, and this is unaffected by HP recovery debuffs. Since you are going to have only Oathbreakers in your army anyway, you always get additional HP recovery with this, in addition to your Respect 5 HP recovery. So, the more recovery we have, the better for our Oathbreakers, since we don't need to hire new Oathbreakers. So this will help self-sustaining your army. And then, looking at his armor, this stays the same. It is the same logic like before. This is one of the biggest weaknesses of the King of the Dead, which is why we should stay with these options. There isn't any golden gear that gives more resistance to elemental damage than these two. If you're fighting against good side, quilted armor. Evil side, go with superior hauberk. The mask stays the same. Best option for us. If you have any items in your mind, please let me know in the comment section below, but I still think that these items belong here. But we can argue about his accessory, and I think there are two options here. The first one being the Ent-draught Calabash. It has lots of might, lots of HP for your army, but above all, it is increasing the recovery you can give to your units. Like more healing. Whenever you proc a healing, it will be stronger healing. And this will go well with his resurrection ability here, with his weapon, as well as with his recovery title on respect 5. So this is the reason why I have decided the Ent-draught Calabash might be good to have. Another amazing option would be the Box of Knowledge. But this is kinda luck based, since it needs to proc for you to get value. So it has a proc chance of 10% when you haven't refined it, but once you have refined it to maximum, it is a proc chance of 60% on every round to have a random debuffing mechanic removed. And remember, debuffs are one of his weaknesses, and this can remove that weakness on every round if it procs. In addition to that, you can also get a damage dealt plus 9% debuff, but I'm aiming for this box just because of the random debuff cleanse. So this means if you want to play your King of the Dead in a more recovery way, go with the Ent-draught, but if you want to be removing one of his biggest weaknesses, like debuffing mechanics, go with the Box of Knowledge, since that gives you a chance to remove random debuffs. And that leads us to his respect 10 item. Is it worth to get this item? In my opinion, no. And let me explain why. So, it might have all the nice stats we are looking for, like might, focus, and plus attack. Yeah, that's a given. But what really is a pity is special effect. First round against all enemies deals a certain percentage of focus damage, and this scales with focus. Alright, it is a nice burst. But it can be countered with focus protection and high alert. That is the first point why I don't like it. And the second one would be, and inflicts madness for the first round. We all know that the Horseman's helmet or helmets like that have madness immunity. And the special effect of this item is being shut down so easily, which is why I don't recommend getting this item. Alright, now here we are at his troop composition, and this is a very easy one. Just as I said, the King of the Dead is only worth playing once you have Oathbreakers, and whenever you have Oathbreakers, it's going to be a single stack of Oathbreakers in your army anyway. We're going to scale this up, and that's it. You are battle ready. This army is going to get hurt a lot by debuffing mechanics such as Manipulate from the Bone Musk or Concussion from the Battle Axe, for example. Now it is time to have a look into reports. I was fighting against good side as well as against evil side. You will be seeing both reports here. Every single player was amazingly good equipped and an outstanding fighter. So this is my gear. I'm running Resurrection, Bone Musk with Hysteria this time, Focus Protection, Drums of Moria. I got my Oathbreakers with the special effect, Significant Assault, increases the damage dealt we have by 30% when attacking a target that is being stunned, subject to madness, or cannot recover HP. Guess what? We have maxed out our Respect 0, the Betrayer, to a maximum. That means that the enemy army cannot be healed, which means we have this proc up all day long. Cool. And look at the results. I am kinda disappointed since Eowyn is dealing nothing but physical damage, and Oathbreakers are considered 90% resistant against physical damage. So we are only eating 10% physical damage whenever they attack. But we are still losing so many Oathbreakers. What's going on here? That's crazy. Marshals with parry. Then Cataphracts with blessed armor. Then the Cavaliers with evade. And Eowyn has good gear, but it is still not maxed out. I have more maxed out gear than her. This is a high respect level Eowyn, don't get me wrong, but I expected so much more from this report. Another fight. This time we are fighting against Theoden. My gear and special effect stays the same. Let's see what he has equipped. Sharp Point, I think this would make more sense with 𝗘𝗱𝗁. Scale Mail, Melee Vigor, alright. Warding, so stun immunity against our CC, I see. And he's got the correct talents, so overall a very good Theoden. Meant, okay. Cataphract, Blessed Armor once more. And Ram Riders aren't maxed out yet. Rupture, I see. And here we are fighting against Galadriel, but guys, don't be confused. We are only achieving this result since I have Focus Protection, or else I think we would be losing this fight. Galadriel has Solid Metal with the Guardians, and then Divide and Conquer, tanky units, and Dispersion. This is Galadriel's gear, Amplification, oh, even more burst damage with Focus. Amazing gear. Grey Wizard's Hat. Alright, cool. Look at the focus she's receiving. And of course the Worn Out Smoking Pipe with Sustain. Good gear. Now here we have a Theoden, and let's see what he has equipped. Blessed Armor with his Marshals. Cataphract, Blessed Armor as well, so very tanky units. And of course the Evade. This gear. Battle Axe with Flay. Scale Mail, Full Helm, and lots of respect. This guy definitely has a lot of respect spent into his Theoden. Here is a Sauron fight, and this report kind of surprised me. I wasn't expecting this result. Let's see what has happened. So, his champions have Divide and Conquer. They also have Challenge, and this is one of the biggest weaknesses of the Oathbreakers. Prioritizes enemy unit with highest tier, target unit next hit damage minus 50%. Holy cow! Our Oathbreakers, whenever this hits us, deal 50% less damage. That is shutting down our damage by a big chunk. Then he has also Dragoons, good tanks, Halberdiers, and then Sauron wants to give us Madness, which kinda won't work against us. If our army is affected by Madness, we can't hit an army next to us, since there is no army to hit. The only thing that can happen here is our King of the Dead falling victim to Madness, and then he attacks against our Oathbreakers, but the King of the Dead is dealing minimum damage with his focus damage. So that's nothing to worry for us, which is why we are having a positive result here. And also, his focus damage isn't really dealing damage against us, since we have the Quilted Armor with Focus Protection. And this is why we are winning this fight. Do you remember when I said that one of his biggest weaknesses is elemental damage, and which is why you need to equip the Superior Hauberk with Fire Protection? This is the reason why. Elemental damage, and especially the Witch King, are going to counter you hardcore. And the only thing that's going to save you is Fire Protection. It is what it is. The Witch King has amazingly good gear. Cutlass, Melee Might, Best in Slot, Warborn Battleplate. Awesome. Horseman's Helmet. Drums of Moria. Alright, here is another fight, this time against Kirun. I thought we should be winning this fight, but something has happened here. Let's first check out this Kirun. Amazing gear, gigantic hammer, wow. Massive breastplate, also good gear. Horseman's helmet. So he is receiving our stun. This isn't ward. This isn't warding, like we are stunning this guy. Drums of Barad-dûr with self-sustain. Alright, so first weakness, Easterling. We are getting a debuff that's shutting down the damage by 20% of our Oathbreakers. And then he's making his units more tanky. He is also giving them a certain percentage chance to reduce physical damage. That shouldn't be a problem, we are dealing focus damage anyway. Golden Visage, now this isn't hurting us anyway, our minimum damage is very close to our maximum damage. Sandstorm, well, the Madness effect isn't hurting us, but what could hurt us is the debuff that reduces our damage. Phalanx, that's not hurting us. Master of the War Chariot. Now this title isn't hurting us at all. That's nothing I worry about. He doesn't have War Chariots. His Dragoons, it says, against large units deal more damage. That isn't hurting us either. Halberdier damage received from mounted units. Oathbreakers aren't mounted units, so his Respect 5 title isn't hurting us at all. Absolute Leader. All allies. Physical damage dealt plus 10% for each allied evil man unit type present. Alright, so a bit damage increase for his evil man units, but that shouldn't hurt us a lot since this is physical damage. Tribal Tactics. Chance to gain follow-up. But coming back to this report, I am kinda disappointed. I expected the King of the Dead, a commander who is so resistant against physical damage with his Oathbreakers, to achieve a much better result than this against an army which specializes in physical damage. Here we are fighting Sunint, and Sunint, as you know, is very strong, but what makes her very strong in this constellation is her T4 champions. Like, we get the debuff again, our damage is getting shut down, but above all, she just nukes us away with her Morgul Arbalest, since these guys deal also elemental damage. Attacks deal an additional 20% poison damage, and this hurts us a lot. And there you go, this Sunint is doing a great job. Amazing gear. Yeah, you definitely can't complain about the gear. She even has a chance of resisting our stuns in the first 4 rounds with Aegis. And she's also got Pursuit, just in case. And this shall be our last report for this video. Do you remember when I said debuffing mechanics are strong against us? Now here you see a lot of those. You see the debuffing effect of the champions. Once more, this debuff is shutting down the damage of the Oathbreakers. And in addition to that, the ability Easterling is also putting a debuff on top of our Oathbreakers. Minus 20% stats. Now that means that our Oathbreakers are dealing like almost no damage because of these debuffs. And this Khaldun has amazingly good gear. Fang of the East, this is Respect 10 weapon, almost maximum refined Warborn Battleplate with Fortitude of Soldiers. I'm waiting so long for this special effect to drop with this armor. Easterling Helm. His evil men are almost 100% immune to stun. Wow. This Khaldun is a beast. And do you see how a tier 1 commander is just screwing my tier 3 King of the Dead? So this is why I don't consider the King of the Dead among the top 5 good side commanders. He has an honorable mention. He kinda shines more when he is fighting against good side, but I wouldn't use this guy against evil side. Even the physical damage commanders on evil side are destroying King of the Dead like this. And that's it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by leaving a like and consider subscribing. I see you guys next time.